Hello and a very warm welcome back to the garden. It's a stunning, really hot day here in June, and it's time to show you what's going on in our permaculture and no-dig inspired kitchen garden. So we're here at the first bed in the entrance of the garden, and the first thing that we've got growing here is Ford Hook giant chard. It's a chard that I've never grown before, but I've been mulching it just because it is a leafy green and it needs a lot of moisture with grass clippings to help maintain the moisture. And you'll see that we do that quite a lot in the garden, especially in this video, because it's been so hot. We're actually running out of water because we're not on mains. So we're just having to be careful with that. Now, something that I've never grown before is this. Now, I think I'm going to butcher the name, but it's called Hookatai Black Mint. And it's this stunning plant that smells like this amazing kind of mint. But there's something else to it. Maybe like, I don't know, for me, maybe like a vanilla-y undertone. But apparently this is going to get quite big, up to 3 foot in size. Keen to see how that goes. And you'll see that there's a lot of marigolds dotted, well, pot marigolds, these are calendula, dotted around the garden, just adding these pops of orange. This here is one of my favourite things that's happened this year in the garden. It's caraway, and it's green caraway seeds. And I always think about the real gems in the garden that make it different, make it special, things that you can never get from a supermarket. And green caraway seeds, that the flavour is insane. They're just tiny seeds and they pack so much. It kind of reminds me of green coriander seeds. And it's a biennial, so it just overwintered absolutely fine, forgot it was here. Then these leaves came up and it shot up, and just about to do a big harvest of these amazing seeds that are so potent, and also they create these tiny little white flowers that you can also eat. So it's June the 22nd, and it's an exciting day for me because it will mark the first broad bean harvest of the season. This is a broad bean called Ratio. I think it's a perfect size, and I'm pleased with how these have been performing. There was a bit of wind, so we've had to put up a very simple structure using just bamboo and string, but they're looking nice and healthy. We've also, because we had really cold weather that knocked off a few of these plants, we replaced them with crimson flowered dwarf beans. I don't know which are which now, but all I do know is that I'm going to enjoy them. And now in the bed in front of me here, this is where we had our garlic, which did succumb to rust, so we kind of pulled it out nice and early. But the same day that we took out the garlic, we've put in quite a lot. So we've got dwarf beans, and then we've got 2 types of beetroot that we've put in, and then I've also put in a row of oca right in front of the carrots, just as something different. Oca is it's a stunning plant. It has lots of nice texture, and it's a nice tuber. So I had some plants, and there's a little gap there. I thought I'd just put them in. So the biggest challenge that we are actually facing this year is not really the lack of water. It's actually a bit of a vole problem. It seems to be a bit of a boom year in their population, and for the most part we've been managing. I always like to sow some extra seeds, so if a plant does get damaged, we can replace it. What they do is they bury underneath the plants, and this can then create an air pocket where the roots can dry out and then the plants can actually die. So very often it's actually about going around, looking where there is damage, and there's some beetroot here that I'll need to replace. But if you see a plant popped up, I just push it back down and I persist. And I'll show you an example where that has actually worked and I haven't actually had to replace any plants using that method. So these dwarf beans were the first that we put in, and they've put on a lot of growth now, and they're just about to probably start flowering in the next week or 2. We had a lot of voles under here, and I'd always come across plants that had popped up or were leaning over. I just kept on pressing them down, and all of the plants have survived. The voles have given up, they've settled, and now I can look forward to some nice harvests. So it's really nice because the borage is now all starting to come out around the garden. I've been seeing a lot of bees, especially bumblebees, really enjoying. They're actually a really tasty flower. They're a bit like kind of on the cucumber spectrum. It's probably the best way in terms of describing the flavour. We've also got this dill here that I'm going to let flower. And talking about flowers, these are 3 leek heads that will soon explode in the next 2 or 3 weeks with beautiful big pops of purple, and I've never seen such a concentration of bumblebees as I have with leek flowers. So the onions are starting to bulb up now, and these are looking really, really healthy. Now, one thing that I like to do is I don't actually grow spring onions, because what I do instead is either with onions or with shallots is I'll actually pull off one of the leaves and I can chop this up nice and finely, and it's basically the same thing as a spring onion to add on top of salads. But yeah, we've got over 100 onions here, so if it's all good, I'm getting, you know, the equivalent of 2 onions a week. Of course, they're not going to store quite that long, but it's certainly going to be more than enough onions for me over autumn and winter. This corner of the garden has changed quite a bit. It was very much surrounded with a lot of Asturian tree cabbage. We've actually taken most of them out, apart from the ones that aren't flowering, because my guess is we're going to put in either a bunch of kale or a bunch of leeks in this bed. Whenever we remove crops, we actually cut them just below the base of the soil and we leave the roots in. Leaving roots in the ground is one of the easiest ways to promote plant health. It's adding more carbon, it's keeping that structure, it's keeping the ground nice and loose and friable. And then it's gone a bit crazy in this corner as well. We've got hops that have decided to take over the 2 ends of these A-frames that we're going to have to deal with. I don't know how it's supporting itself like that. But up here we've got Greek gigantes starting to work their way up, and I'll have to untangle some of them. And then here we've got 2 different. We've got Trail of Tears, and then we've also got Abundance, and they're both kind of climbing pole beans. And very quickly now, because of the heat that we're getting, they're going to start flying up the bamboo canes, and then it's going to feel actually quite nice and sheltered in this corner in hopefully about a month. So on the theme of climbing beans, in here we've actually got some Ronda Black runner beans that are starting to grow. We're trying to keep it open on the inside, and eventually they will just outgrow everything else that's here. But this is just all self-sown dill, and we've got borage here as well, and this is parsley and fennel that's coming in. So we've got a lot of dill. I'm going to harvest a bunch of it, and then you could make something like a dill oil, which is a really nice way of capturing the flavour and adding on top of all sorts of salads and stuff. But I quite like the wildness of this corner of the bed. I'm just like looking through, and there's all sorts of things happening. It feels quite wild, but every single part of this is edible, or at least has edible elements. There's quite a lot happening in this bed. It's a bit of a random bed that I was going to dedicate to squash, and then I thought actually it's a nice bed to fill with other things, and we will have some squash in the corner. There's a lot of things happening. We've got, this is evening primrose, which is starting to grow. That's self-sown, that'll look lovely. We've got a foxglove flowering, obviously poisonous, but it's great for the bees. Then in the front we've got Chinese kale kailan, which is more of a stem, I believe, that you cut, and the flowers. And then we've got fennel. Rondo is a variety, and to help prevent the fennel from bolting, which is running to seed prematurely, and you don't actually get much of a root, we've been actually mulching it with quite a lot of grass clippings to retain that moisture, which helps to delay or prevent bolting from happening. And then you'll see around the garden we've got lots of little patches of peas. These are just starting to develop now. I'm not actually going to add a structure, I'm just going to kind of let them sprawl a bit on the ground. I quite like that. It makes it more exciting actually trying to go through and find the pods. And then we've got, this is Dakota Black sweet corn, which we had a lot of spare seedlings, and I've never grown sweet corn outside before. I thought, you know what, now's the time to do it. I've been telling myself it's impossible, but that's basically from other people that I've heard that from. So I thought, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to see if we can grow sweet corn outside in this part of Wales. And then obviously I've got more peas in the front. That's Calvert and Wonder. And I like this bed. I'll fill it with a couple of squash plants, but it just feels like there's quite a lot happening. This corner of the garden has seen a little bit of change, mainly where in front of me, out of camera, we had a lot of kale, but we've removed that, we've chopped and dropped it, and we're ready to replace it. We've got some better quality garlic that we're actually going to harvest probably in early July. And then here it's just our weird perennial bed, but I did have a lot of spare field beans. So we've put out these field beans here, and they're just starting to create the little beans at the bottom as an extra harvest. And very often my approach is, if I see a little bit of a gap and I've got some spare plants, I don't really care what it is, I will put it in. It's kind of my lazy approach to polyculture is, if there's a gap and if I feel that I have a plant that complements that gap, I will just stick it in and see what happens. All I've got left is I've got some runner beans to plant out here. Scarlet Emperor, a very solid, kind of quite a traditional variety. This will probably be the only Scarlet Emperor I grow in this garden, but I think this will be a nice corner for it. There's quite a lot of things happening in this bed. We've got telephone peas going up that wigwam, which will hopefully reach the top fairly soon. This is coriander, and I actually celebrated when it started running to seed, because I'm growing this here for the, not really the flowers, but for the green coriander seeds, and you can see there's quite a plethora of flowers starting to appear, so that is a really exciting sign. I then got a row, these are spare fennel, the rondo fennel that you saw earlier, 6 spare plants that I've put down here. Planted some Celtis, stem lettuce. This is our celery that again we're keeping moist, and it's really nice and moist and cool when I remove the mat of grass from underneath, because celery is one of those plants that just needs constant soil moisture. We've then planted a little row of carrots that have direct sown, and then these big things that look like beetroot or chard is actually mangelwurzel or mangle beet, and they've been putting on a lot of growth. Now, for the most part, it's 2 plants each, and we're actually going to thin them to 1 plant each, but you can eat the leaves. So we're actually letting them grow slightly big. We're going to thin them. We can treat all of those leaves from the thinned one a bit like Swiss chard or beetroot, and there's a lot of food there just from the thinnings. And then we're going to allow those individual plants to grow on and hopefully become nice big plants. And then towards the end, we've got some more field beans. So field beans are like broad beans, but a dwarf version of both the beans and the pod, but they're really, really productive. And then a few peas in the corner. And talking about peas, right next to me here is Oregon sugar snap. And I've just been munching away on the first few pods. You want to start eating them when the peas are developing, and it's a really tasty snack. A new crop for me is yacon, and I was kindly given some spare tubers when I went to visit Real Seeds, and I thought I'd give them a go. I've heard some really good things about them, so I'm going to plant a couple in this bed because they can grow quite large, and apparently they do really like a generous handful of compost. And this trowel that I'm using, I'm an ambassador for Gardena this year, and this trowel is, I think, my new favourite product. It's their Ecoline range, so really trying to actually use, for example, 85% of the plastic here is made from recycled plastic, most of it from household waste. But the thing that I love about it, not only is it so durable, I've tried to bend it to no avail, but it comes with a 25-year guarantee, FSC wood as well. And yeah, I just wanted to give it a very honest rating because of the size, it is so useful whether you're doing small holes or deep holes, and it feels very solid. I've been surprised how many trowels I've managed to bend in my time, so looking forward to putting this through its paces. So I'm just going to plant a couple of yacon here, and I'm really curious to see how these do because they're incredibly productive. They store well, the tubers, and it's my hope that they become a regular for this garden. In the foreground is a culinary field bean that we're growing. It's called Vesper field bean. I've heard good things about it. We're growing a lot here and also at our project site, and we're keen to see how they perform. This bed is one of the beds that I included in a couple of videos back about growing with a lack of compost. This is actually quite a low fertility bed. So we're just putting a few things in just to see how they cope. Legumes is one good one to put in, like the field beans, and also some peas here and some sweet peas. We're going to see how they do. But my favourite part about a bed, which I featured before in previous garden tours for this year, which we have a whole playlist so you can see month by month how the garden changes. I've been talking about putting in this row of foxgloves here because I always felt that this corner was just a little bit too green. There's a lot of green here, and now the foxgloves are coming into life, and they're adding this amazing pop of colour, and they've added a lot of energy and interest to this corner. So that's a prime example of, if you feel something's a little boring, think about a plant or something that you can grow, even if it isn't edible, that can really change the feel for it. And I really enjoy that about gardening. A garden's a blank canvas that you can pick and choose what you want to grow to suit either what you need or the feelings that you want or what you want to enjoy. So in the bed in front of me, we've got some parsley, radish, borage, Asturian tree cabbage growing. And then here we actually have, this is a shoot type broccoli, so a tender stem type broccoli that we're growing here, broccolini, which is really going to be really fun. I love it. I think it's tastier than broccoli because the stem is the best part. When I'm eating a broccoli head, my favourite thing is actually to slice up the stem and pan fry that in a bit of butter. This here is amaranth. It's put on a lot of growth in the last few days actually. I'm quite surprised. This is going to add so much colour. It's going to go to about this height, maybe a bit higher, with big shards of kind of red flowers. It's going to add such a punch of colour in this area of the garden. And then here, this is an overwintered fennel that's now taller than me, so it's heading on towards 7 foot, and we're going to let it flower because the fennel flowers are really tasty, a real delicate taste, and also the seeds, the green seeds of fennel, are really nice kind of aniseed flavour. And then we've just planted some other things around it. But I like this bed. I like where it's going. We've had vole issues in this bed. There's probably been about 3 or 4 beds where there have been quite serious vole issues. But as you can see, everything's just continuing on with life. So closest to you in the foreground is some yin yang bush beans, which have these beautiful looking seeds. Here I just want to highlight what this is. This is buckwheat. I've never grown it before. We've got a lot of it at other sites. We've got a massive terrace. We're using it as a cover crop, but it's flowering and it looks beautiful. This is a form of ruby buckwheat. So the tiny little flower heads are just appearing, and you can see kind of like a nice pink colour. So hopefully, next time we do the garden tour, this buckwheat will be in full display. And then here, we've actually got some chocolate type sunflower, so it creates a nice chocolatey looking flower, and again it's going to add a lot of nice splashes of colour to the garden, and of course edible values as well. In this bed just outside the solar tunnel, lots of different things going. It's another bit of a bed where if we have some spare seedlings, put it in, because I like having a nice mix of different plants in a bed. If you think about it, a raised bed is almost like a mini garden in itself, and you can treat it like that. By far my favourite part of this bed though is more peas. These are Kelvedon Wonder, which are just a solid variety that grow kind of semi-dwarfing. And then we've got more Wonder Black runner beans there, some more sweet corn, you know, just lots of different things happening, and this is filling up quite quickly. So the bed that I'm sat at is our asparagus bed. Now just letting it all grow and die back naturally. I'm thinking of potentially next year intercropping with strawberries. Strawberries and asparagus is quite a common companion planting of the two crops. But I have put in the calendula hedge. In the last garden tour you could see all just the little plants, but now they're all starting to flower, and they'll be flowering now for as long as I keep on top of deadheading, another 2 to 3 months at least. Then this little patch here, I've just got some more amaranth to just create a nice shard of colour. And then behind me, just letting the comfrey flower, lots of bees, and then we're going to add that to compost and the liquid feeds that we're making. This is primarily it's a brassica seed bed where we start off our brassicas, thinking everything like purple sprouting broccoli, kale, cabbage. These are basically ready size now to be transplanted into their final growing positions at a deeper level, because you can plant brassicas deeper than they actually grow. At the end we had our rat's tail radish. It's still there, but I'm now letting it all seed. There's no other radish that's flying at the moment, and I was really happy with how that turned out. And because the seeds came over from America and I'm limited to how many packets I can get, I'm going to save seed here and hopefully have my own supply. And then we've got some a globe artichoke, which we took a harvest from very recently, which is always a nice little thing to enjoy, and some more climbing beans. You've seen that there's a lot of wigwams and vertical structures in this garden. I just think that having something, because quite a lot of plants are horizontal, having then these kind of, not unstrategic, but just these little pockets of vertical interest and vertical growth makes a small space feel a lot more full, but it also helps make, in a different way, it helps make a big space feel more interesting. Rather than feeling too open, you're actually creating a lot of nice little rooms and areas of interest to walk throughout the garden and to kind of split up the view a bit. So the coffee ground experiment bed is actually doing pretty well for just the neat coffee ground, but we've got to bring order back into this chaos. So in the next garden tour, hopefully that'll all be sorted and I can give you a proper update. Plus we'll start doing the first bricks or refractometer readings on the peas and the beans to see if there's any difference, and I'll be able to share those with you in the next tour. But behind me here is one of my favourite things to see. It's amazing forests, or these rows of leeks, 5 different varieties. They're about a week or 2 away from transplanting now. I mean, some of them I would transplant, and I can't wait, because I've been without leeks for about 3 months now, and it's getting really tough. It's absolutely sweltering here in the polycrub, and so it'll just be a quick one, but most of the polycrub is planted up. We've got cucumbers, we've got tomatoes, the physalis is doing really well, lots of nice fruits coming off, and then as you can see, the corn as well. It's definitely doubled in growth over the last few days. I was actually shocked when I came to the garden this morning to have a look. And then just apart from all the many different varieties of tomatoes, where we kind of prioritised, the weirder the name, the sooner in the list it should be in terms of priorities for finding space. So I'm interested to see what fruits summer brings and what kind of cool basket shots we can get there. But just in the corner, just to my right, we've got a load of carrots that have gone to flower, and we just left them there to see what would happen, and there's a lot of really interesting insects on it. So yeah, it's just really cool to think that small kind of little orange carrots that were sown in March 2021 can then eventually turn into quite a sight of amazing big white flowers. Even after gardening for many, many years, it always staggers me how quickly things grow and how much changes. And it's going to be really interesting looking in a month's time how this garden is looking. So if you want to compare this garden to the end of May, this video right here will take you to that, and you can have a quick comparison to see how much can happen in as little as 4 weeks.